So we're really excited to have you here, and we're really happy to talk about law enforcement and what that is. So like first off, like what's the job like? Serving as a law enforcement professional.
All right,
Um,
I'll take that question. Um, so I guess every day is kind of different for us. Everyone has a different purpose as to why they go into law enforcement, but our ultimate purpose is to go out into the community, bridge that gap, and to let people know that we are here to help. That helping capacity comes from whether it's a call for service to help an elderly person get into their residence or some more violent as a gunshot victim. So, unlike other jobs, when we are responding to calls or we go in to check in at the beginning of our day, we don't know what's held for our day. So, it's kind of dictated around the citizens in the area. Some days are more stressful than others, but our main purpose is to kind of solve those problems for the community or be that voice for those that do not have a voice in our communities.
thanks thanks for sharing that. I think Officer Perella, you want to comment?
Pretty much what Officer Whitfield said. For me, every day is brand new. Every day is something new. When we start work, we never know what's going to happen that day, what to expect. But our main focus is to assist the community. Like he said, whether that's something as simple as helping someone who was locked out of their vehicle, all the way up to consoling someone whose family member has passed away. So we go every day, various levels. It could start off small, it could start off big and end small. You just never know what you're going to get. But our main goal is to service the community.
Thanks for sharing that. Sir Flo, do you have anything to add to what Officer Perella and what said?
Well, basically about the same for me. I got into police. I took like desk jobs, so I prefer to be out. But the public has this knowledge that the police is more out arresting people, but you spend more time helping people than arresting people. So, and I think that's the misconception is that we're all about catching the bad guys, but we do more things for the good guys as opposed to the bad guys in the course of a day.
Yeah, I found that very true. In my own personal experience with the places, I mean, there's so many things they're doing to help people. It's really amazing. What are some examples where you've been able to help people, or you had a meaningful connection with someone you were working with or civilian?
Just as the other two officers mentioned, your day will consist of helping the elderly get in their house, or the lost one, the dementia, the Alzheimer person who's walked away from their home and their family is frantic trying to find them, that, or they're locked out of their cars, or the lost kid in the park, or the person who's even lost in the grocery store. They'll call us for that. It's just so many aspects of helping people that we do in the course of a day.
Yeah, it seems like the calls are many and for different needs. So like, how did you get into law enforcement? And each of you can answer this question if you like. We can start with Officer Perella.
So I grew up in a pretty rough environment, a very poor, rough environment, and I honestly was raised to all our interactions with police were negative. So everything I knew about the police was negative. I never thought I would be a police officer. This was not anything I planned on doing, but this is something that chose me. I was in college planning to be an attorney, and I worked at a law firm, and I saw it was the boringest job of my whole life. and I couldn't do that for the rest of my life. So I took a criminal justice class and fell in love with it. And I became a police officer, and I absolutely love my job. Every day is something new. I never get bored. I love helping people. I also love handling when someone is doing wrong and I need to put them in jail. I love that aspect too. But for me, it wasn't a planned event. It basically, I changed my whole lifestyle and train of thought.
Yeah. Would you say it was like, at what point during like your journey do you decide that for you it was like law enforcement was like even a career that you wanted, or that helped change your perspective of like the police are your enemy to like, oh, I want to be a police officer?
When I was in college, I started understanding that the police, those interactions that I witnessed or had with the police growing up were because they were there to address somebody committing a crime. Somebody was doing wrong and they were there to address that. So I had to change my whole mindset and understand that I had negative interactions with the police, and I want to change how the community interacts with the police. I want them to have positive interactions. And I want to be able to make that difference, even if it's just me, one person out there making a difference, showing the community that I am a human being, I am friendly, I can sympathize with you, I can help you, I am here for you versus against you. Then that's what I want to do. So when my mindset changed, it just all fell into place and clicked for me.
Oh, I think it's always neat how just being open to like, learning from our experiences and maybe changing our mindset, and like opens up like, I mean, for you that opened up a whole entire another like career path, which I think is really cool. Officer Flo, do you want to take that question next? How did you get into this job?
Well, it definitely was no lifelong dream, that's for sure. I ended up in Illinois from the military, and I came from rural Arkansas, had practically no interaction with the police. So after I landed myself in Illinois, I was working at a bank, saw an ad for the police job. I liked the pay, being honest, and I thought, okay, I can do that. So it actually took me about 5 years to really come to love the job and enjoy the job, because I knew nothing about policing. To me, in the beginning, it was just a paycheck, but I did it for 28 years. So after about 5 years, I started to enjoy the job and like pretty much everything about the job.
Oh, I think that's really neat that it kind of like grew on you. And you're right, like the paychecks are pretty good, but a lot of friends in law enforcement, and it's even starting pay too. So anyone interested in getting into law enforcement, look at that. They do a lot for you. The benefits are really good.
Yeah.
Officer Whitefield, if you want to take that question next.
Yeah, so just like Officer Perella, I grew up west side Chicago, and what they would consider low income, high crime. And my interaction with policing was never fun. Moving forward through high school, I became attached to my school resource officer, who then introduced me into law enforcement programs. And from there, I became an explorer, and they kind of just guided me the way. I always had a heart for service, but I was always that person that wanted to be in charge of things. So law enforcement was the best option, where I could be in charge of things, create my own destiny, but also get back in service. So, I mean, as one of my recent students, can see, like, I'm very passionate about service and giving back. But more importantly, I like to focus on the youth and at-risk youth, as they like to call them, because those youth aren't at risk. but the uniform allows me to give a connection and give them a different view. So my experience is more personal driven because I focus on the problems or what other people consider problems. And I just try to make it a little bit better, whether that's having those kids come back and just be like, hey, how you doing? Or come back and telling me champion stories of them overcoming some type of obstacle. So yeah, the money good, but I mean, I drive off of you all ish. I mean, you got to experience it last summer. Like my energy
Oh,
comes from you all. So definitely appreciate the opportunity to be here though. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. And I know it definitely I think it's the opportunity to promote change in people's lives that I think is truly what seems like it connects everyone who goes into law enforcement. Because yeah, I know I personally was able to experience just a little bit of that through the police academy or the law enforcement youth police academy, and it's really neat. Like I've never met people who are more like selfless and service driven. Truly everyone in law enforcement does have a heart for service. So I think that's amazing that that's one of the reasons that you wanted to go into law enforcement. What are some obstacles you've encountered as you in becoming a police officer or just with a police officer? Officer Wyfield, do you want to answer that? And then we'll go to Flo and Officer Perella.
Yeah. So being in law enforcement, obviously you'll have obstacles. It's very different being Black in law enforcement because you're fighting two battles, so to speak. You're fighting that internal battle of what's right and what you see on national news and things like that. Specifically, let's look at George Floyd. That was an internal battle that most Black officers fought because it was very challenging and touching. But you learn to understand that your moral compass is something that shouldn't be altered. So you have to identify who you are and not allow policing to become your identity, but develop a way to do both and understand that you are there to do a job. So that can be a challenge, but more so family time. We don't, again, get to dictate our day. So if I'm stuck on a call and I have a family gathering at 4 o'clock and I was supposed to be off at 3 o'clock, but I got a late call and now I'm staying over until 4 o'clock in the morning, you miss those opportunities to spend that time with the family. So there's a lot of sacrifice that comes with law enforcement. And then we also battle the media from time to time of their agendas that they put out there. So it's extra work for us to push and develop those relationships with the community. But yeah, so those just a few of the challenges that we face. Obviously, there's more, but those are the top ones that I can think of at the moment.
Thank you. And I think there's certainly a lot to be said for I mean the time commitment, because again, it's not like you could just walk off and be like, okay, I'm done for the days. I mean, there's a time commitment that you have and something you just don't take lightly. It was Officer Perella and then Officer Flo.
I guess at the beginning, the biggest challenge for me was I was the first Black officer that Hoffman Estates had hired. So there was racial bias within the department, and then it was also outside of the department because I started like in 1986. One of the challenges would be when I would stop white officers, not white officers, but white citizens. I mean, some of them just didn't even want to have anything to do with me. Some of them literally drove off because they didn't want to be stopped. And so, but there was also back then, hopefully it's not that way today, but having to deal with your superiors who more like have an understanding of the citizens' take of me as if they weren't used to me, as if I was an alien. So that was a challenge because I've always been who would speak up for myself, and that was the one of the biggest hurdles was, and that's why I said it took me about 5 years to like the job. So, and then another challenge was like the other officer was saying about family time, is you don't dictate holidays. I had a kid, so I practically worked every Christmas. That's just what you do when you're the new officer on the job. So basically, the family challenges and the racial challenges that I had early on, but by the time I left, all those things had been resolved. So that would be my biggest challenge in the job.
Yeah. So how did, like, as over time you mentioned that those challenges got resolved. So like, but for the first couple of years it was really tough. How did you like get through those years to be in law enforcement for 25 years, which is quite a long time?
Well, in the beginning, which well, once you learn the system, you learn how to maneuver around it. At first, during the probation period, you don't say anything, because one thing about policing, when you're a probationary officer, they can let you go at any time. It's just something that's simple. You just didn't work out. So, well aware of that, I had to just deal with all those. I mean, it was pretty horrible. But once I got off probation, that's when things start to change, because I started challenging my superiors and everybody else who had a problem with it. But like it wasn't easy. I mean, at the 5-year mark, it didn't stop. It just that as the longer I stayed there, the more I understood laws and rights and different things, and it got better.
I don't know if we're supposed to say anything, but I just have to say, I'm looking at all three of the officers' face. And when she said that during the probationary period, you keep your mouth closed, all three of them had the exact same expression on their faces. They all three just like kind of snickered and said, "Hey, inside joke, only you three understood it." So I just had to say that, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's it's always interesting, like when you first get hired on, there's not much you can do about difficult things. I mean, because again, you don't have much like seniority, so they can let you go at a moment's notice. Officer Barella, if you wanted to take that next question.
As far as challenges in law enforcement, there are many. For me, like Officer Whitfield said, is balancing family, home life with work life, because our job is very demanding. Like he said, some days you go into work, you're supposed to work an 8-hour day, and some guy decides to do something crazy and he's held up in his barricade in his home, and you're there for 8 extra hours for some reason. You just can't control what somebody's going to do that day. And it does take away from the time you're supposed to spend with your family. So this job is a selfless job. You do not put yourself first. And that is very unlike a lot of other jobs. We basically put our life on the line for strangers, and we take away our family time for strangers. So that's a struggle. That's something you have to learn to balance. For me, early on in my career, I struggled a lot with the end result. So I would put all this time and effort into investigating someone, arresting them, and then they'd be out of jail before I was even done with my paperwork. And that was a struggle for me. And then they'd never get jail time or whatever, even though I know I had proof they were committing crimes or doing XYZ. But that's something that I had to learn how to let go. I had to learn that the court system was not a part of my job. My job was to get the person into the jail. And then after that, I had to let it go. I did my part by getting them off the street, whether he was selling dope to somebody's mom and they couldn't be a mom anymore, and now their kids are hungry on the street, or if he was hurting someone, beating a woman, or vice versa, or whatever. My job was to stop that activity and get him off the street. And I had to learn that's where my job stopped. So, although the challenges probably are greater than the benefits, I still truly love being a police officer.
Yeah. I think it's amazing. I've been able to meet a lot of different people from a lot of different communities, and law enforcement has a very positive outlook, and with it's very team oriented, which is one of the best leadership styles and like cultures that I've seen. So I think it's really good that that you're able to, even though it's difficult, you're able to still have that in working the job. Um, what makes the job worth it to each of you? Like why you come in every single day, or being in law enforcement for 25 years, like what do you continue in the job? Um, officer Perella, do you want to answer that, and then Flo and Officer Whitefield?
Okay, so for me, it's the interaction with the community. I love to help, to give. I love to see change in someone. I am a mentor for teenage girls through a program called Girls Run the World. I love to see someone who maybe was like me in a bad environment, but ultimately wants to do the right thing, make that complete change. I love to see if I run into a family in need, like I said before, maybe a mom on drug and the kids keep running away, to turn that table and help mom get into a better place and help the kids have a mom. Just seeing a change and seeing the light fill into a person, like there's nothing better than that. When you see that you've helped someone and it has impacted their life, like that gives me joy.
Thanks for sharing that. Officer Flo and then Officer Whitefield.
Gabriel, I had a frozen screen there for a minute, so I didn't catch all your question.
Oh, sorry. My question was, what makes the being in law enforcement worth it to you? Like, why were you in law enforcement for 25 years? Like yeah, like what, like why stay if, there's a lot of obstacles?
Well, I can honestly say that I enjoyed the last probably 15 years of the job. And I stayed because I did enjoy it. I enjoyed interacting with them across, for the most part. I spent 5 years in the junior high school and the high school as the police liaison. So I dealt with kids a lot and teenagers. And then I was also the juvenile officer, probably about 15 years of the last 15 years of my career. So whenever juveniles came into the station and they needed an officer there, I represented the juvenile and, part of the interview process of it. So I did enjoy the interactions. I just to being out there. Like I said, I'm not an inside person. I prefer to be out. So just being able to do what I want to do, stop who I want to stop, and pretty much, just the community involvement. That was the greatest part of it.
Yeah, it was honestly amazing. I met so many officers through like just different community events. They're very involved in the community. So I appreciate that. Officer Whitefield, do you want to answer that? It was what makes the job worth it to you?
So obviously everyone, whether it's a banker or an attorney, everyone has a why. Why do I get up every morning and go and do what it is that I do? And I believe my why is I I like to believe that I make a change every day that I go out on those streets, whether it's saying hello to a community member or a gang member, because everyone deserves to be treated equally, but more importantly, everyone to be treated as a human is very important. So I believe that sometimes we kind of get away from that when we get into our different financial classes where we start to believe that people are beneath us. But one thing that I strive to do is treat people fairly and give them the opportunity that may not have been awarded to them by another officer. So that gives me joy. Um, but it's like a self satisfaction to just hear success stories or be that hero that helped this person get out of this trauma or traumatic situation. So it's just like a little self praise. Whereas I know if I wasn't in the field, I probably couldn't make that difference. So as long as I'm out making a difference, I'll continue to be in law enforcement, and that'll be my why. So the day that you see me retire, I've lost making a difference, and it's time for me to go find something else.
Thank you. My next question is, what advice would you have for people who want to get into law enforcement? Like, like how did you get into it? And then what advice would you have for people who are interested in getting into it? Officer Whitefield, and then Flo, and then Perella.
As far as getting into law enforcement, those students or those citizens that are trying to connect need to meet with a recruiter. But things that they can do on their own is obviously personal fitness is very important. So start working out to pass that power test, to enter the academy. But more important, for your safety, you don't want to be this overweight officer, or maybe not even an overweight officer, but an out of shape officer that's fighting for your life with a subject, and that could potentially kill you if you don't have the strength or the endurance to hold your own, so to speak, and to help arrives. So another thing is people tend to not be honest or not tell the truth when it comes to those applications. There's this myth that if you've tried street drugs in the past, that you will be automatically disqualified from a policing process, and that's not the case. So then people start trying to fabricate stories to pass those tests. It's not a good thing. So I would definitely say try to keep your criminal record clean, start the personal fitness goals, and then start speaking to people. But more importantly, don't waste your time. Take the time to learn the profession, see what it does, join any programs that are guided towards law enforcement, to see if it's for you, because sometimes we believe that law enforcement or anything may be for us, but once we finally get into that field, we like, this ain't me. So versus wasting time, just go and start doing those programs. Like they have Explore programs, they have Youth Academy, they have cadet programs. Even just being a security officer could introduce you to law enforcement and the different type of clients that you'll have to deal with. So just do your research prior to saying that you want to be a police officer.
Thank you. And then Officer Flo.
Okay, just to piggyback on what Officer Whitfield said. Yes, it's important, you tell the truth on those applications. Like if you smoke the weed, okay, you smoke the weed. But however, you got to gear your life towards what you want in the future. Policing is not a job that you're going to just walk into and you've been arrested 10 times and all that kind of stuff, or you act out in school. Because trust me, they will go back as far as they can find a teacher to tell what type of character you had in school. So that's important. I know at some point we all grow up and we get some sense. But if you were a kid who followed no rules, you ran away all the time, you did all this crazy stuff, skipped classes, well, I think someone's going to look at your character, because at 21 years old, there's not much background to check on you. You don't have a track record of working jobs to tell how you are. You don't have much of your school record is basically the only record that you're going to have. Those teachers are the ones who's going to speak on your behalf when you're trying to get that job as a police officer. So try to get the best grades because you're going to have to write a whole lot of reports. And so writing is something you ought to try to, I mean, you don't have to be perfect. You're not going to be a journalist, but there are certain things that you need to, if that's what you know you want to do, you got to at least, I mean, act halfway decent. I mean, teenagers seems to think life doesn't start until they make up their mind at 25 years old. But it depends on what you're going to want to do at 25 years old. And it's certainly law enforcement is one of those things that go back in your background. If you're someone who's drag racing, and now I would think if I'm on that police board and you got 20 speeding tickets, well, I would think you in that squad car, when you turn that siren on, you probably gonna test and see just how far it's gonna go, So I would say, you gotta, the physical agility part, yes, but also your education part and your character, because that's gonna speak volumes about you.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because I mean, again, like with any jobs you get, you're always going to need recommendations. So keeping your teachers close with you and, being a good student, and I think being a good student, sometimes it's not just getting good grades, but it's being attentive and at least trying. Like I know in some cases you may not get the best grades, but you're at least putting in the effort. And that's the thing that one of the effort is the most important part about doing anything in life. Anything meaningful requires effort. And so, especially in law enforcement, you have to be meaningful with where you put that effort because it can be very easy to get fixated on like a certain aspect. And you're like, well, I got to be really good at this. But it's like, well, you also need to be able to run that, mile and a half, in, under 8 minutes, right? Like, Officer Barella, if you want to answer those.
So not to discount what Officer Flo said, but I will say this, in high school, I fought almost every day. The officer who hired me was my school resource officer. Shout out to retired Officer Jenkins. But I was able to take those negative actions, that negative vibe from me and turn it around to a positive one and make a change in myself and move on to make a change in the community. So I don't want people to be discouraged if they did live a life like me, where you were always in trouble, always fighting XYZ. You can turn your life around and change and become a police officer who makes over $120,000 a year. It's possible. I did it. If you ever need to know, come talk to me. But definitely I had to change my life from all that negative stuff. I went to college, got my degree, worked and, was able to show the police force that, I had a complete 180 and I was living a different lifestyle. So they saw me as a valuable resource. All those things I did before in my past life helped me as a police officer because now I'm looking at those people who were me and I know how they act and I know how they move. So I can better assess what's going on. But I will say anybody looking to be a police officer, don't let your past keep you from trying to accomplish your dreams because people do grow and they become different people and they, you can't hold their past against them forever. Also, you have to have a passion for this job. It can't just be for the money. You have to be passionate about law enforcement, community service, community interactions. If you are here for money, it's not going to work for you. You're going to be miserable. So, You must have that passion, that fire inside of you to make a change, to be the change, all of that.
Thank you. I think it's truly you know what you said, Officer Perellas. I mean, you want to be that change in order to, you know, get into law enforcement or any of the like emergency services. You do need to be you know, wanting to make that change, you know, in the community and everywhere. So thank you. Is there any advice you would offer to people out there? Just any closing thoughts about law enforcement or our conversation today? We'll go Officer Flo, Officer Whitefield, and then Officer Barella.
Could you repeat that again? What?
Yeah, it was. What is your like? What would your closing advice be to members of the community and youth about law enforcement, or yeah, just getting into it?
Well, I think I would say to anyone, you know, police, they're not bad people. You know, I noticed this Law Enforcement Appreciation Week. I mean, I appreciate it when people recognize the police and, you know, just thank you, you know, not giving you the middle finger. You know, I just think that that's important, that you to be recognized for what we do, because we're not your enemies. And if anybody who's considering it, getting into it, it's a great profession. It really is. It's what you make of it, but you got to have, well, I should say, it's important to have forward. Some people land in it and do very well, and you know, wasn't everybody's dream to be a police officer, but doesn't mean that you can't do a great job at it. But it's certainly, if you know at this stage of your life that's what you want to do, then you should start living your life and as that you want to do, whether it's staying out of trouble, doing the right things, getting the right grades, working on your agility. You know, it just depends. But you know, like I said, most young people don't know what they want at this age. Very few of them do, but it's still, and like as the other officer said, even if you've been down that road that we wouldn't consider a great one, you still can change, or don't let it discourage you, because there are always ways doors can open for you.
Thank you. As a follow-up to that, since it is Officer Appreciation Week, what are ways that people can show appreciation to police officers? Officer Flo, if you want to answer that.
Well, one thing I would see the public, if I could, people always like to, when I was working, bring treats into this. People gonna make treats from a bunch of strangers, not police officers. So if you're gonna do something, if it's in the way of food, make sure it's packages from the store. That would be my first advice, because so much of that stuff gets thrown away. You know, people come in the station with a plate of fresh baked cookies. Well, who's going to eat them? You don't know who the person is bringing them. You don't, because too many people hate the police. So I know we wasn't eating them. I don't know what other, but you know, it doesn't have to be a gift. It doesn't have to be food. A simple thank you, or just kind words. That's the best way to show your appreciation for the police.
Thank you. And then Officer Whitefield and then Perella.
If I could offer, I guess, any advice or I guess closing remarks, I would just ask the public to look at us as individual officers. Try not to lump us together. Officer may react in one way based on personal experiences or training, whereas Officer B may react solely on training. So just, we happen to have an encounter with you, until you make an accurate assessment. try not to give us the finger right away, because we may be that same officer that has to respond back to your house for maybe your mother's not on CPR. So like just try to give us the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, we're human, and we make mistakes. So try not to rush to judge. But more importantly, as you saw in the youth academy, we're human outside of these uniforms. So outside of these uniforms, yes, we have a family. Yes, we eat just like you all eat. We get tired just like you all get tired when we run in that mile and a half. So just give us the opportunity to be human and allow us to make those mistakes. As far as appreciation, just a simple thank you is fine, or just even a hello. I was at a store earlier, and a baby was so excited to see the police. I don't know why she was excited, but she was really excited, and that really made me feel good because it lets me know that the children are watching and they're aware of our uniform. And her mom had a frown on her face at first, but the smile was contagious. So the baby smiled, the mom smiled, and I smiled, and it was a happy little gathering. So just a simple hello or a smile would be appreciative.
Thank you. And Officer Perella.
I would say to the public, just again, understand, like Officer Whitfield said, we are human beings. Even though I have a police uniform on, I'm still a regular woman. I'm a mother. I'm a teacher. You know, I'm just a regular person in the community, and I understand what it's like to be a part of the community. One thing is officers, everything we do is made on split-second decisions. So sometimes when you see things on the news, you say, oh, why did that officer do that? But you may not see, the camera may not be catching what the officer saw in their own eyes. So, and they had to make a decision right away on that. So, you know, give them a little bit of a break. Let the full story come out before you react. And also when you see us, don't yell at us, don't cuss at us, because to be honest with you, we've seen a lot of things in our career, a lot of things that normal people couldn't handle seeing. So we are very strong mentally, but you know, every time someone starts attacking us, it's just breaking us down. We need to be boosted up. We need to be lifted up. So support us, lift us up. And the more you boost us up and lift us up, the more we're going to boost you up and lift you up. We're going to support you and lift you up. So we should just be supporting each other and not trying to break each other down. That would be my advice to the community. As far as appreciation, just come sit and chat with me. I like to talk and laugh and hear stories. So that's all I could ask for. I do like Dunkin' Donuts. If you guys want to drop off some donuts, I'm cool with that. But other than that, like Flo said, no homemade treats. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I appreciate you, but I can't do it. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you. Well, I think we've all found this very informative, and we really appreciate you spending the time with us and answering some of our questions. And we're really looking forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I wanted to add for Itzel, she had to step away. She's a new mom, but she wanted to say thank you for doing the good work and protecting our community. I don't know, Davian, do you have a statement you want to say?
Not really, but I just want to say thank you because y'all catch a lot of flack that y'all don't deserve. Cause people judge all cops based on one or two bad cops, and y'all don't deserve that. So I just thank you and appreciate all the stuff y'all do on a daily basis. Cause I know one thing I learned about being a police officer, cause I watch a lot of TV. Like it's not 100% guarantee y'all go home every night. So like the job I do, I just really appreciate y'all for doing that for us.
Yeah. we we do really appreciate all the work that you do, and I will be honest, it's sometimes it's hard to remember that, after you go home, you take off the uniform and you have a family, because I remember one day I saw one of my friends who was a police officer at the gym, and they were saying how I was like, I didn't even recognize them. I was like, wait a second. I'm like, I know that person. I'm like, but they don't, it's a uniform. So I think it's truly admirable what you do, and that you devote, a significant portion of your time and effort and a life to serving others. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much. And we're done.